Hi, I'm Daryl Urbanski, and welcome to the Best Business Podcast. My mission is to help create 200 new multi-millionaire business owners. How? You'll do better when you know better. In my interviews, you'll hear from self-made millionaires, seven-figure business owners, authors, and world-class experts sharing how they did it so you can too without experiencing the same obstacles they did. Now, if you like this interview, please share it with a friend you think will benefit. They'll appreciate it, and I will as well. You can also connect with me on social media. Look for Daryl Urbanski, D-A-R-Y-L, Urban Ski, U-R-B-A-N-S-K-I, and add me so we can be friends. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy what I've prepared for you right here, right now. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always, and today we are joined by Santos, President and CEO of Indarra Cybersecurity, Inc. Indarra is a company specializing in phishing prevention to address the risks of cyber intrusions. With more than 25 years of IT experience, he remains a leading expert on information security, realizing the risks imposed by click-and-go conveniences. I've asked him to join us today and share with us how we can protect ourselves in this new technological world. So, Van, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. We have a lot of people who are very concerned if their customer databases or their information or their bank account information or who knows what is exposed or phished or hacked or all that. So I appreciate you coming to share your knowledge with us today. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very well. I appreciate you having me. I'm very excited about this.
Right. Well, and it might not sound like a sexy topic, but at the same time, it's a really important topic, and it is kind of sexy if you've ever had any sort of issues, if you've ever been hacked, if you've ever had anybody solicit your information. I get emails like that all the time. The phishing emails, I get them all the time. I got one this last week, like it was from an officer, but when you look at the email, it was like XYB147 at xyb.com. And I'm like, that's a little suspicious. I don't think the police department would be emailing me about a speeding ticket from that kind of an email address. So
you're absolutely right. It's not a sexy topic. The funny thing is it's pervasive in our everyday lives and people don't necessarily realize it. And congratulations on not falling for the phishing scam.
Yeah, I've actually had to train a couple of assistants because they've been like, Daryl, oh my gosh, you have to check this out. I'm like, they're like, Daryl, your bank has emailed you, because I get like a couple hundred emails a day. And I'm like, I don't think, and that's the first telltale for me is check and we can go into the specifics later, but I always check who's the email, not the name, but the email it's coming from, and the link. I never click the link in the email. I always copy and paste the link elsewhere if I can, and take a look at the link like that they're trying to get me to click, and be like, where is this going? Because the email anybody can get an email from a company and copy and paste it over, and then do whatever they need to do and put their malicious whatever, right? And they just want to know that you're real, so they can do whatever they want to do to you. And I feel bad. There's like old ladies that get scammed that like have their life savings taken away, and just a lot of different things out there. But before we get into all that, how did you get into this? What were you doing before you got? 25 years is a long time, but how did you get into battling the cyber bullies?
So my background is basically all technology. Started programming way back in 1995, and it just followed for me a very logical path. I got tired of programming. I just got bored. I have the analytical mind to do programming. I don't have the attention span to do programming. So I said, hey, let's go to the business side of IT. And when I went to the business side, I started to see so many other opportunities within IT that I would not have seen just as a programmer or someone who's managing programming. And one thing led to another. The business side led to audit. Audit led to security and information security, data assurance, data security. And that's the path. And when I landed there, it became a passion. My passion is helping people in general, but combining that together, it became a passion for me.
Got it. So, and it's a really valid passion. It's something that it's kind of like online warfare in a lot of ways. Like people are hacking. There's the recent election. People think Russia hacked, which I heard that one of the things you can do to protect your site from a lot of stuff is shut off traffic from Russia.
Well, it's funny. So the election aside, a lot of hackers and hacking events do come out of Eastern Europe and do come out of China. And it's just the way that the internet is today, without regulations in some spots from a government internal to their country. It allows it to happen. And those are two of the biggest spots.
So what have been some of your challenges that you've had to overcome in this? I mean, we've come a long way. I mean, 25 years, the internet has changed radically. Oh my gosh. So what have been some of the biggest obstacles or biggest developments you've seen in your career?
Some of the biggest obstacles, that you're right, it is a long way. I'll tell you that probably my biggest obstacle in my career was I lost my passion. And that happened probably about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And the reason I lost my passion was probably, if I look at it, and I'm very honest about it, due to three factors that I did not react to. One was career, two was personal growth, and then three, it was kind of a spiritual growth. And I was neglecting all of those three things. I found myself in a position where I was lost professionally and I was lost personally. So I began to struggle. And what I'll be honest, at first it was a very, very difficult time period because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do for myself personally as well as professionally. But I overcame that really through personal spiritual development. And I don't say spiritual in a religious sense,
right?
But in the terms of spiritual, so meditation, mindfulness, not hanging on to the past in terms of allowing it to guide my future. And so that was really how I overcame the biggest challenge. There are obviously other challenges from a career path perspective, but just this challenge for me, the struggle was me.
It's so well put. And often, it's funny that often in any time I've worked with a client or in any type of business, and even in my own life, it always comes down to that. Like the owner is always the bottleneck, or you are always in the way. And, if you fixed yourself, you could fix the problem. You can't fix other people, but if you could take care of yourself, you'll make sure there's one less scoundrel in the world. And
that is, you're exactly right. It's about taking care of you and taking you out of the equation for being potential roadblocks. And what I also think is what you kind of alluded to something else, and that is also the founder syndrome. And that is, when someone is a founder of a company or is deeply rooted in the company, if they're not balanced personally, they're going to not want to let go of aspects of the business. They're not going to want to they're not going to want to allow other people to make decisions for them. They're going to want to ensure that it's all with them. But I've seen when you get past that, when you get past the issues internally, it frees up the confidence to allow people to do what you would be doing. So yeah, I've seen that as well.
So now in terms of data security and even just, again, online digital warfare, how have you seen things develop over 25 years?
That is a very interesting question. And I'm probably not going to give you the same answer that most people would. I remember the days of the internet when it was for lack of better terms, lawless. You can get away with anything. Over the years, obviously, the government started to place regulations, laws in place to protect people. But that hasn't stopped the attacks. And the majority of attacks right now in the United States are coming from outside of the United States. I think it's pretty fair to say. The things that I've seen are even though laws have been put in place, they're rarely used. The number of attacks, the frequency of the attacks, and the severity of the attacks continue to get worse and worse every year.
Mm.
And here's why I say that my answer is probably not the same as everyone else's. Companies and people neglect their security.
Ooh, yes, they do.
And I mean, I'm going to break this down into two groups. Let's do companies first. Up until probably 10 years ago, the majority of companies in the United States did not even have an information security, cybersecurity program.
Mm-hmm.
Today, you're looking at, Fortune 50 companies that are pulling $50, $60 billion in revenue, and their cybersecurity programs, $10 million maybe that they're dedicating to it in some cases. And, when I take it a step further, when it comes to security awareness within the company, some companies only budget $50,000, $100,000 for training. And then it's not even a specific department as it is spread amongst people. So they're not giving the attention. They're starting to wake up to it. And a number of companies are much better than others. But as a whole, companies are not giving it the attention that it really deserves. Now, people, on the other hand, people are completely oblivious to it. Completely. Think about how many people you know that have access to other people's passwords or bank pins or personal information along those lines. And people are the biggest targets, and they just don't pay attention to it, which is a shame, because at one point or another, I firmly believe that everyone at one point or another is going to be affected by some kind of cybersecurity issue. If you are on the internet, if you have a phone, at some point it's going to bite you.
That's really important to know of. And in fact, I already know someone. There's a gym that I moved cities, but everyone here knows I'm big on CrossFit gym that I used to go to. And the owner, he had his whole Facebook. They built a Facebook community of like 1,000 people, and this is like real people that came through their gym. And then he had to abandon it because his Facebook account got hacked, and there was no way for him to recover it. And that person was doing heinous things in the group and all sorts of stuff, and they had to they just had to restart a group. But for the business, like for them, that was the only list that they had to communicate with their members. Like they didn't keep and use email lists. They probably had people's emails, but I don't really remember getting any emails from them. Like that's it. Like the time that I know there, and everyone else I talked to, like it was Facebook was their main communication channel, and like wiped out. And so now they've got to rebuild it all. And they've got a good business, successful business. They put a lot of systems into place. They're doing great guys, but that really hurts. That really hurts. Those are your past customers, your leads. I mean, that sort of stuff, you know what I mean? Like all the potential people that they were already talking to, like all of a sudden now they're back to square one. Like, okay, we got to get on the phone and start calling some of these people. And, all that like farm that, you know what I mean? Like those seeds that you planted.
And what you've described happens every day. And even though that is a small thing in comparison to, I just had my entire bank account wiped out, it's still cybercrime, and it impacts your bottom line, and it makes you start over. So it's a wide spectrum of potential attacks, and people are oblivious to it. The general population is oblivious to it.
Yep. Yeah, as far as bank accounts, I just want to say this to everyone here. I had to learn the hard way. Your bank account is not safe. Keeping money in your bank, I'm sorry, but and I don't, maybe I should or shouldn't be saying this publicly, but I like cash. Like, I mean, sure, invest in things and do that, but I am afraid of leaving money in bank accounts. I've already had experiences. I do not leave anytime my bank account gets above a certain amount. It's taken out. It's not left there. And even then, like I'm not like, you might call me OCD to a certain extent just in how protective I am in that thing, because I've been bitten once before. It wasn't phishing, it was actually tax in the government, but it was they were calling an old phone number for the business that didn't even exist. If they had just Googled the business and found our new phone number and reached out, they would have gotten me, and it would have all been resolved. And it was an issue that just was a huge headache. It was a huge headache. And in the end, they owed me money. At the end of it all, they owed me money, but they took 4 or 5 months to pay it back. But it was overnight that they all of a sudden took it. And then when I started doing the research, it's not hard for someone to pull money out of your bank account. If they just convince the bank manager, they go in and seem professional and they show some ID and, that you can print out at home and laminate and then go in, like they just, boom, here you go. Here's $10,000. See you later from this person's bank. Like, it's just crazy. It's really...
And you're absolutely right. I completely agree with you that you need to be very, very careful with your assets as well. And it is so. What you're talking about from the last section is social engineering. Someone can print out stuff, pose as you or pose as an official, and get away with it. And that social engineering is also a part of cybersecurity because it happens every day.
Oh yeah. Well, and we talked about emails at the beginning. You get an email from your bank, supposedly. You click the link, you end up on your bank's website, you put in your info, you log in, but you didn't know that was being monitored. And now you just gave the bad guys your login info. And guess what? They're going to log in. There's no sign of break and enter. There's no hacking. They just use your login info, your password, go to your bank and send themselves some money.
And all of a sudden,
start buying things that they want to buy.
All of a sudden, all of the money that you had is in Kuala Lumpur, and you're like, how did that happen? Nothing against Kuala Lumpur, I'm just saying.
No. Of course. It's funny because I actually just did an interview with a lady out of Singapore, and that's where she was. I was like, how are you doing? She's like, oh, good. I just came back from, and I didn't try to repeat it, but I was like, oh, wow. And then you're talking about it. But anyways, I digress. So what do you recommend to people? If there's someone that's got a business and they're struggling and maybe don't have a bunch of resources to dedicate to hire someone and build a team, all that sort of stuff. Sorry, it's my dog. She's super happy. It was her birthday yesterday. But anyways, what would you recommend to someone that is, struggling and concerned, or even potentially going through something like this now?
So the most basic thing is, make sure that your systems are always up to date. That's number one. Number two, make sure that you have a reliable antivirus software installed on your computer. Because you would be surprised.
Even if it's Mac?
I'm sorry?
Even if it's Apple?
Even if it's Apple. Macs are just as susceptible as PCs. PCs get the majority of viruses because they have a larger user base. But they're just as susceptible. So those are the two most basic things that anyone could do, and it's really not going to cost them a lot of money. Outside of that, it's being aware of what you're doing. Like you said, look at the email address. If all of a sudden, you're getting an email from your father and it's coming from a Mexican email address, or domain in Mexico, I should say, you probably know it's not going to be him. So it's just being vigilant. It really, really is. And so when we wrote our software to do our testing, our phishing prevention testing, we were doing the testing of the software on our family members and friends that we know and stuff like that. And they would still fall for it. So it's amazing even how much people will just click, do things that they shouldn't do just because they trust, quote unquote, the source. So it really is taking time to just be vigilant. Those are the three things that I would say.
So let's recap on those. So one is make sure everything's updated. Make sure everything's updated. You get all the software updates on things. They're there to protect you, right? The second one was, why am I drawing a blank?
Antivirus software.
That's really terrible. That was it. Because I was like, I don't think that exists for Mac, but I think you do. You just buy some, not the free stuff. You got to pay for it.
I would personally, pay for it. There are probably some really good free options. Paying for it, however, ensures that those virus definitions, whenever something comes out, is going to be included. I've never used a free one, so I can't specifically speak to it, but I would venture a guess there probably are some good services out there.
Now, can you speak to something that I don't know if this is something other people have thought, but is it not in a virus company's antivirus software's interest to put viruses on your computer so you have to use their software to get it off? Like, I've always thought, like, sometimes isn't using the free antivirus software making yourself a mark? Like, aren't you now a target because you're in their base? I don't know. Maybe that's just totally conspiracy theory-esque. But I've always felt that way, and I don't know why. That's actually part of why I don't have one. Even I would use like free online tools that you would go to the website and it would scan your computer and leave, but I never wanted to download something onto my computer when I did have PC.
So to your point, that's another reason why I only will use something that I've paid for, because I trust it at that point. It's going to be a big name, and it's not. If they were to do something like you suggested, that I would assume is a lawsuit in the making. Free ones, however, I could see a scenario where something like that would happen. I think that it would ruin their credibility instantly and put them out of business if they were discovered. But I could see where that scenario would take place. So that's why I gravitate towards well-respected names, and I have no problem paying for it if the service and the quality is there.
Got it. Okay, so that addresses that. So keep everything updated, get a good antivirus software, and be vigilant. Now, what is it? Be vigilant in not just clicking things? I mean, do we have to be paranoid? There's a great quote. What was it? Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. That was it. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
That's kind of like my one of my quotes of, just because I'm crazy doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just because I'm crazy doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Yeah, frankly, yes, be paranoid. I know that sounds extreme, but you really, really need to be paranoid about your cybersecurity safety. Because if you think about it on a grander picture, it's really your privacy. And if you're willing to give away your privacy, okay, great, have fun with that. But I want to protect my privacy. I want to protect my information as much as I possibly can, because ultimately that's all that we have left. So it's being paranoid, making sure that if something seems wrong, investigate it as much as possible. Like you said, don't click on random links. If you can copy and paste it and look at it, do that. Make sure you look at the names. Are the names even spelled right? Are the emails that you're getting from sources that you trust and know? It really is being paranoid. And I'm okay with saying that, because the ultimate risk is having everything you have wiped away. And, okay, I will be paranoid about that. I'm fine with saying that. And if you think about it this way, most people do not back up their computers.
Okay.
You get, like, for example, the WannaCry virus from 2 weeks ago. I guess it was a worm. If you get that, all of your data, gone. Everything. All of your pictures, maybe your taxes.
Say it's called WannaCry? The WannaCry?
WannaCry was, so if you, I don't know.
No, just, is that the name? Yeah. Want to Cry?
WANNA. WannaCry.
Oh, WannaCry. Yep. Okay. You want all my data's gone.
That's exactly what 200,000 people probably did.
Wow.
So.
Wow. 200,000 people.
Exactly.
What's the purpose? What's the benefit of that? Like, all right, you created something that's like interrupted 200,000 people's lives have now been, like, I know it's just technology and it's just like, really at the end of the day, you still have your health, you still have your relative, you still have all these wonderful things. But I mean, it's a huge interruption to your life. Like, what's the benefit? Is there not a benefit?
So I have my hypothesis.
For the person that does it. Okay.
So obviously the people behind that worm were trying to get money. However, I think that they did not expect it to grow as quickly and as wide as they did. The reason I say that is they wanted to get the ransom money, quote unquote, to unlock the computers via Bitcoin. And are you familiar with Bitcoin?
I know what Bitcoin is. I don't know why it's I don't know. My confidence in it as a currency is not there, but I know that it's an online currency that some people think will be the future of all the world's
Okay.
currencies.
And that's a fairly accurate description. One of the things that, and for your listening audience, one of the things that people say about Bitcoin is that it is not traceable, which is not true. With plenty of time, you can track where all of those Bitcoins went over the life of that coin. So I think the hackers, they only were targeting a small group. It got out of control, and all of a sudden, now 200,000 people are infected. So ultimately, their motivation was money. And I think it exploded beyond anyone's expectations.
So I'm sorry, we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but the question, that was one because it just came up, because I'm like, what a waste. It's like when people get into illegal businesses. Like, why don't you put that energy into something that's not going to put you in jail, not going to kill people, not going to destroy communities? Like, why not? Like, why? I know, like, guns and drugs and all that stuff. Like, I just don't get that. Like, same energy, same focus, same skill set even, just put into something productive. But some people aren't that farsighted. So that was just something that was like a natural, like almost internally angry question. But the real question I want to ask is, what about with businesses? Like, is there a process that they should go through when they offboard, like when they offboard a staff or member or employee, or even onboard? Like, how should businesses handle that? Is there?
So, onboarding and offboarding. Every company needs to have a process for both of those events. Onboarding, you need to make sure that that company has a training process in place for the new individual. So that new individual becomes comfortable and familiar with all of your IT and cybersecurity policies that are pertinent to protecting the company. And then you need to test them on it to make sure that they learned it and that they're going to apply it. And that testing probably should happen both at onboarding and then probably annually. Offboarding, so when someone leaves either voluntarily or otherwise, the second that they leave, all access needs to be turned off. All. I would even advocate, especially in situations where it's a non-voluntary or hostile situation, that the second that it becomes known that there's an issue, say an employee is suspended, all of their account access is removed until it is completely resolved to the point where the company feels safe. Because what you have is, you have someone leaving a company. Let's say, for example, someone was with an organization for 30 years. It was their career. They literally don't know anywhere else how life is outside of that company. They get let go after 30 years. You right there have a potential risk for someone to steal information, corrupt information, delete information. And the company does not want that. So the second that you run into a situation where it's either someone hostile or just someone leaving, that access needs to be cut off. And you need to get all of their devices back. Laptop, if the company gave them a cell phone, that cell phone, a tablet or an iPad, whatever, all needs to come back. So there needs to be a process in place for that.
Okay. So all access taken away immediately, all devices turned off, because you don't know, and they could have the best intentions or not. And the other part is that it could sit there for even a year, 2 years, and they might just be curious one day and be like, I wonder if I can still access blank. And log in, and then they're like...
Or there's another situation where they leave. Good people don't even think about it. They're gone. Okay, great. I'm moving on to my next phase in life. They then go and sell the device that they had to the organization, didn't take it back. Sell it on eBay. Now, next thing you know, someone else has potential access to that information.
In some industries, that's a big no-no. That can crush your business.
Yes, it can.
Got it. So what are the biggest threats to a business then? Is it online attacks? Is it disgruntled employee or employee negligence? Is it what are the three or five biggest concerns for a business?
Surprisingly, the evidence that I've seen repeatedly is that the biggest threat is actually employees. And that is a wide range of things, but it comes both to negligence as well as people that are just hostile to the company. The second is very close, is phishing. And it's just people randomly clicking on links. You would be surprised how many clients that I've worked with, how many people that I've talked to that just click and click and click. And the answer that I get back after speaking to them, well, why did you do it? I wasn't paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
So it's phishing is a huge one, which turns into, the potential for viruses, potential for information being stolen. And then the third thing that I would say that is really, it's starting to come back, is social engineering. Like we discussed before, someone pretending to be someone that they're not, calling up the help desk saying, hey, here's my user account. I lost my password. Could you send it to me? Or whatever. Someone trying to gain access just by impersonating someone else. Now that third one is starting to make a comeback. It's not nearly as prevalent as the first two.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't come back, because so many times I call my cell phone company, my credit card company. I feel like they ask, honestly, and I hope someone's listening, you guys ask the dumbest security questions ever. Like, what's the address? Like, oh, well, if they stole my wallet, they probably know my address. Like, just like, what's the 3 digits on the back of the card? Well, if they stole my card, they probably know the 3 digits on the back. Like, I get frustrated sometimes because I'm like, how does that, like, I think you just wasted 30 seconds of my life by asking me that question. Like, how does that do anything? Like, other than maybe frighten someone off if they're trying to call in and think, like, it's just, anyways, I'm sorry. That was a rant. But it's a common thing. I always laugh at that too, and this is kind of a sidebar, but I've seen like security guards that have like the metal wave thing that like it's supposed to beep, and they're like it's like they're counting people going through the door, like beep, okay, go beep, yep, go beep, and I'm like, dude, do you know what that tool in your hand is for? It's so when it goes off, you're supposed to investigate, and I'm not like, I'm gonna get blown up because buddy here doesn't know. Anyways,
but you actually do raise a good point. I think that the questions probably are because it's going to scare someone off. But to your point, anyone who spends the time is going to have that. They either have purchased the information on the individual, they've found the information. So you do raise a very valid point.
Well, that goes back to when I say, like, anyone can go into the bank, and if they have an ID that looks similar, I mean, you can buy souvenir IDs. You can buy souvenir IDs in Toronto, and they're souvenir IDs. So when you leave Canada, you can say, look at I got a Canadian ID, and it's, and it's very realistic looking. We'll just say that. And I mean, they could go buy a souvenir ID and show up at the bank and know things like your address and like just the silliest things. Like the good questions are like, what were your last purchase? Although I'm like, I don't even remember that. But the bank, I just feel like some of them are the silliest. It's just a deterrent. It's just like someone's going to feel that like I'm doing something wrong, but they know they're doing something wrong from the start. So anyways, that's offline. That's not necessarily online, but I think it is something to be aware of. And I think that first two, the phishing and the negligent hostile, we did talk about a couple of ways to help prevent negligence and how to protect yourself from hostile employees, especially like you mentioned with the job. Someone's let go, they're very passionate. They may want to sell information to a competitor company. They may, even if this is a guy you grew up with or a girl you grew up with and have worked with forever, you don't know what they're in and what kind of situation is on and what kind of accumulated stress may push them to do. And then the phishing, I guess, is the biggest one. Is there like a browser or something? Like, how does somebody, because some people, they just don't know, like what, all staff need to check all links, all URLs all the time. How do you be more careful? Is there software you can use? What about passwords for employees? Do you have to use something like some sort of password tool for staff? Is that a necessity, or is it okay to have a spreadsheet with passwords and then just update all the passwords when people leave, or how sophisticated? Or
so there are several questions there. Now I'll try to. It's perfectly fine. I'll try to narrow them down. So phishing, it really so within an organization, if you are getting emails from within your organization, It is fairly safe. But again, I don't want to say it is completely safe because people can even spoof internal email addresses. So I think you need to use common sense. If something doesn't feel right, then you need to address it as such. But really, outside of, is everything spelled right in the email, where it's blatant, we have something blatantly wrong, because a lot of these emails are coming out of countries where English is not the first language. So things are spelled incredibly wrong. Again, the names, the email addresses, are they coming from domains that and the links, are they going to, like, if it says it's coming from Bank of America, is it going to the Bank of America link? So you just you really do need to be vigilant. Now, to your other question about passwords, you never want to write down passwords, ever. Especially when you're talking about a business and keeping it all in one place. That's a huge, huge no-no. Essentially, you've given access to everything at that point if someone finds it. You probably want to come up with some method of remembering your password. So, for example, take 2 letters from your favorite musical plus 2 random numbers, a symbol plus two letters from the make of your car. So you want to come up with something that you're going to remember. You're going to want to make it complicated, but at the same time have some kind of method for you to remember it. Now, I know that we are in a time where everything has passwords, and you basically don't remember password 1 to password 2 for different sites anymore. There are tools that are available so you can remember, so you don't have to remember your passwords. There are those tools available. The one that is most common to my knowledge is called LastPass, LASTPASS, and it encrypts the password, so they never see the password, you never see the password, it's just in the tool. And it's a great way to keep that information safe, and you don't have to worry about what your passwords are. I've always had great success with it. If you're talking from a business perspective, that would be something that the organization would have to look at. Does it meet their risk criteria or not? But that is an option.
And if you don't do something like that, then you're exposed. Like if you have a team and everybody needs to know the login info for a tool.
So I would hope that if you have a team and you have a tool, that each person would have their own login and that they would have their own criteria. There are probably cases where you can have a shared login, and what you do is when someone leaves, that login changes.
You just update it.
Or even better yet, that login is forced to change every week or every 2 weeks.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. I had a question, but I totally got distracted by that because you were writing it down. You're like, writing down passwords wrong. I was like, oh. You're like, that's like the biggest no you can do. I was like, oh, okay, note to self.
Let's make a change in that behavior.
Yeah. Oops. Well, I mean, sometimes why my team shares login info is because, and I honestly, for anyone that runs a business that does this, personally, your customers, if they're anything like me, think it's a scam. Why are you charging me $30 to $50 a month for a second login? Is it really taking up a lot of bandwidth to have another seat to log into my tool? I thought I was paying for the tool, not for login info for that tool. Like, that's the part that I'm always like, that's just a money grab. So that's partially why we do shared logins for that, because they want to charge you. You're paying $400 a month for a tool, or even $100 a month for a tool. They want to charge you $10. There's a lot of companies that are doing that now. They want to charge you per person using it, and I'm like, is that really how it works? Like, I mean, if it's storing data, like something like team chats, I get that because every user is adding data. Okay, I kind of get that. Like, I still feel that way, but I kind of get that. But again, if it's like a software application that you're doing, or a dashboarding tool, or an email tool or something like that, and because you want to have everyone on your team have a login, you got to pay $30, $50 per person. I just feel like but I'm paying for the tool. Like, I'm paying for the tool. why it's so. Anyways, that's why that sort of thing comes up.
So
But,
to that point,
digress.
and I can't obviously speak to the companies, but
Of course.
In some cases, I do agree with you. There are organizations that it's just like, it doesn't cost you a thing except to press a button.
Yeah.
So I do feel that. And on the other side, I know in some situations it's because of administrative cost. It truly is because of the security, where the information is being hosted. So yeah, I do agree with you. I do share that frustration as well.
All good. So where do you feel the future of your industry is going? The future of of IT technology and security and this, especially like as we get into fingerprint stuff and all that, like where's the future going, do you think, in terms of this? Is there anything that we need to be aware of that's on the horizon, good or bad?
That is a very interesting question. I think that the future at this point is bleak. And the reason I say that is, well, and let me explain, because after it becomes bleak, I think that there is a revolutionary change coming.
Okay.
I think it's bleak because projections show within the next 4 to 5 years, cybercrime is going to have a huge economic impact. So I think the reason it's bleak is I think that you're going to see events like the WannaCry virus or the WannaCry worm, and I think you're going to see massive events take place in the next 4 to 5 years. So I'm thinking maybe power is shut down again. So if you recall back in 2004, I think it was 2004, the East Coast of the United States and part of Canada was without power for an extended period of time. I think it was like 3 or 5 days.
Yeah, the Eastern Seaboard. I remember that.
So it came out years later that indeed was a cyber attack.
Wow.
Yeah. And initially they said it was an overload because it was a hot day. And then it came out, I think 2007, 2008. Oh, yeah, by the way, that was a cyber attack. So I see things like that happening in the future. I see big economic impacts if organizations don't spend the money. And realistically, they're not going to unless it happens to them.
It was an ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure, but man, people are selling cure like hotcakes, and prevention's kind of going broke, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so what I think is this. I think it's going to be bleak because there's going to be some kind of event that causes everyone to wake up and say, we could have stopped this. And at that point, I think that there will be a concerted effort to make that change. And so I think what we're starting to see things slowly change. 2-factor authentication. So your password plus I got a text from the service. I have to put that in as well. So that's one thing that's really starting to change. There are different things that are being thrown around about how can we eliminate passwords and what technologies we can put in place for that. But it's going to be slow, and there's going to be some major event that really brings upon the change, because we're creatures of habit. Society in general is comfortable, and they don't want to change.
No, change is painful for a lot of people.
And unfortunately,
so it's
going to take a lot of pain to change.
Right. Yeah. But what are some of the? I mean, you say there's a lot of debates over what to do to replace passwords. That. What are the things that you're most hopeful about? What do you think? What's your prediction that we're going to go to? For whether it's for passwords or like, is AI going to be our savior to provide higher level encryption of things, to outsmart things and cross-reference them, and in a fraction of a second, because it's a quantum computer, go and do all the background research and search through facial recognition video to make sure that this person's really the person they say they are? Is it something like that, or is it simpler? It's just going to be retina and finger scans and a chip in your skin, and or something like that? Like, what do you see as the future?
I believe that biometrics is probably that next step. So the fingerprinting, the iris scanning, to some degree, the chipping, you're starting to see some of that. Now, the chipping isn't something that I would want to do per se, but again, I want to protect my privacy, and that goes down a whole different path in my mind. But I think the fingerprinting, the iris scanning are really the next steps. The technology's been around for ages, but you're starting to see it, like the Samsung phone, the S8, the most recent Samsung, the Galaxy S8. Apple has the fingerprinting as well. So it's in the infancy, but I really think that is probably one of the more secure ways of doing it. But again, if you're looking at it from the perspective of, okay, I've got my phone, or I can unlock my laptop, that's great. How does that translate to the internet? And that is not something I have the answer to, because I genuinely, I've heard a lot of different things, but nothing that has really been like, oh, okay, I could see where that would happen. So devices, right. I could see where it would be something along the biometric line. Internet passwords, honestly, truly, I cannot give you an answer to that. I think
sure. No,
I think two-factor authentication is probably the one that needs to really happen next from just a ubiquitous adoption perspective.
So now, what about things? It's funny because I just had this come to mind, and this literally just spurred to mind. So this is actually personal. This is something that's happened in my business. Our server got hacked, and this is an issue that we went through. So we actually have 3 domains that we work with, and one we almost abandoned because it got hacked, and we found out that a spammer had basically hacked our server or something and was sending. We were using HostGator, and we got off of them. I'm sure they're a great service, nothing negative to say, but after this I was like, let's try something new. So someone had got into our domain, and they'd gotten into it like an email account, and they were sending, because my staff was trying to send emails, and they were getting error messages that they're like, hey, you need to slow down, like you've reached the max volume of emails you can send in whatever time frame. And I'm like, who's sending all this email? And we contacted HostGator or the company, and they told us that, yeah, like you guys are maxing out. And I'm like, well, no one on my team is sending that. Like, we don't use that. Like, they're like, do you use any email autoresponders? I'm like, yeah, we do, but it doesn't go through. Like, has nothing to do with our website. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I pay that company worries about the email sending, right? Not, like, it's not sent through us. They're 2 separate things. We've never connected the 2. And then they found out, oh, yeah, our account had been hacked, and someone had been emailing and broadcasting from that, and they apparently fixed it. But that domain, there's still some trail email addresses, company email addresses under that domain, and they're spam. They can't, there's relationships that have been built and communication that's happened and leads that are getting back to us from that. But and this is something that's kind of past and still ongoing. I have a couple staff that still use that, and it's like, well, how do you fix that? How do you fix that after you just abandon it, get a new domain, put everyone up on new email accounts, and go from there? What happens if it happens again?
So,
or how do you protect yourself?
That is a very interesting situation, and it happens probably more often than you would realize. You have really 2 approaches there. One, like you said, you can change the domain, but that obviously impacts your brand. The other thing is, like you had said, you switched to a different hosting provider. That should have taken that domain off of spam lists, because it's usually tied to IP addresses. After our interview, we could have a discussion. I could see if I could look into that and maybe give you some more ideas on how to clear that up.
Sure. But no, it was because the other part, that's the one thing we actually haven't talked about. We talked a lot on this interview about prevention, but what about recouping from it? What about coming back? Someone's listening to this and they copped on the interview because they're like, man, my company, we got, our, and that's why I was like, all right, my email addresses were commandeered and used for spam purposes. How do you come back from that? And I was trying to think of some other alternatives too of that. Like, how do you come back from an attack?
That is another absolutely fantastic question, because most companies do not have a plan in place to do some kind of recovery. And that there are several different things. One, depending on the size of your company and what your market is. But one, you need to get it out there, be it press release, media, whatever, saying, hey, this is what happened. no data was exposed, and here's what we're doing to remediate. So that is number one, is you need to disavow yourself from what happened because you need to protect your brand. Two, on the technical side, there are things that can be done. So, for example, in this case, switching it usually will help clear it up because it's tied, usually spam lists are tied to IP addresses. The companies, or the organizations, I should say companies, that track spamming, if you approach them and you give them the evidence, some will clear that up for you. So there are different ways to do it. The whole triage process, once you have been hacked and have been impacted, it's not exactly a straightforward thing, but there is a formula that you need to put in place to protect your brand. It's really what it comes down to. At that point, it's about brand management, and it's about making sure that you protect the brand and acknowledge what has happened and say what steps you're taking to address it.
Yeah, okay. So it kind of sounds like a three-phase thing. One, disavow what happened, acknowledge and disavow it to protect your brand. Well, I guess that's kind of two, because you say brand management. So that was, communicate with the members or whoever to disavow whatever happened. For us, we don't know who was being emailed. It wasn't our email people, but they were just using our domain. But again, a company's been attacked. They have to make a public announcement to the people affected in whatever way, shape, or form to say, hey, this is what happened. This is why it wasn't us. This is why it was something that was a third party, a malicious third party. Then you need to, again, acknowledge it, and then I guess start getting the technical pieces in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's kind of it. It's like there was a train accident. Hey, we're really sorry. It happened because a cow stepped onto the railway at the last second. We have this, and this in place, and it failed because the cow just ran out of nowhere. We think, someone was hunting. We don't really know. Cow ran out, got hit by the train derailed, big accident. We're really sorry. This is what we're going to do. And then you send the cleaning crew to clean it up and fix the repairs. And then you probably do something at the tail end of that to try to minimize the slowdown in business.
Yes.
I remember there was a guy that got stabbed in the neck in my hometown in a nightclub in my town and died. And that bar they changed the name of that bar the next school year. It's a university town, the town I grew up in. And they changed the name of the bar over the summer because nobody was going. There was a year where that bar was just a ghost. Nobody wanted to go there. That's the place the guy got stabbed in the neck and bled to death on the dance floor in. Nobody wants to go to that bar. So they changed the name. And so that's kind of almost what it sounds like. That's what almost something like that happens in your business. Make an announcement to it. Try sending the cleanup crew, and then have some sort of incentive to people, which might cost you on the front end, but as far as, protecting the brand and retaining the relationship with people and showing that you care and, and that you're as concerned, that kind of makes up for it.
That's exactly what it is. There, like I said, there's a formula, but it's not exactly straightforward because every situation is different. But
it's different, yeah, right.
Like you said, it's exactly that. It's you admit and then you clean it up.
Yeah. You admit, you clean it up, and then you give some sort of incentive to keep your regulars happy and let them know you appreciate them, and something really, really juicy to try to not have what happened to be used by your competitors against you. And unfortunately, there's good luck and bad luck, and unfortunately you got hit by a spell of bad luck. And the good news is the wind that blows on one of us blows on all of us, so bad luck will come around to other people as well. So, got it. That's really helpful. Van, that's really helpful. That's a really good insight. You've been really forthcoming and honest, and I'm sure hopefully there's people taking notes on this call and people taking motivation to act, because people never appreciate the time that they turn left, not right, and don't get hit by a car. And so, my only concern is, like I said before, that the only people who really value this call are the people that have gone through something. And this is the point of this call, is to make you aware of it beforehand. That way you can do something before it's an issue. And then when you never have any sort of problems and you hear of a friend doing that, you can maybe think of Van and myself and thank us. So Van, if people have been listening to this and they do want to get in touch, they want to find out some more information, or they have an existing problem, or they want to get there, because you guys do testing, right? You test companies to test how vulnerable they are and give suggestions on how to improve it. How do they get in touch with you?
Invite them to call me or email me directly. My email address is van.santos Indarra.com, van.santos at Indarra. It's actually not .com, it's .co. I apologize.
So give it one more time. Give it one more time.
Van.santos at Indarra, Indarra.co.
Perfect.
Or
Perfect.
call me directly, 469-407-5392.
And that's area code 1 for anyone that's outside of Canada or the U.S. So, Van, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time on this call. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
No, actually, I think we hit on all the major things.
Yeah, I think we did too. I think this is a great call. Again, for the people listening, if you have a business that has employees and you use any sort of information technology and you do not have anyone on staff or you have not considered that, you may want to listen to this a couple times, even send it to some of your staff and have them listen to it, just so your company's aware and make a plan. Don't interrupt your day-to-day business, of course, if everything's fine now, but I would definitely add it onto your quarterly goal sheet or make it a goal for next quarter to change that, because again, it's not a problem until it's a problem, and then you got a problem. And an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So please, if you want, get in touch with Van or myself or whoever you know in your local community or area to help it. But definitely don't neglect it, because you may regret it later. And small hinges swing big doors. You're working so hard to build your business and to make everything work. Make sure that you're buttoned up. And it sounds like there's some simple steps that you can take, both when onboarding staff and offboarding staff, both just in day-to-day life, and just a couple of simple tests that Van can run your business through to make sure that you're fine, you're safe, you don't really have a lot to worry about, and then you can go back to growing your business. So, Van, thank you so much. I appreciate you, my friend. And yeah, I always enjoy our conversations, and I appreciate you taking the time to help my listeners.
Oh, sure, no problem. It was a great conversation, and I appreciate it too, and I always enjoy them too.
You've reached the end of our interview. Now, first, let me thank you for listening. I appreciate and respect you more than you'll ever know. And now I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. First, what 3 lessons did you just learn? What 3 aha moments just jumped out at you? Second, what can you implement for yourself and your business in the next 24 hours? Third, what can you give to someone else to help you with, or give to them to just do it for you? Whatever it is, remember, taking action is the secret sauce to results. Now, if you think this interview would be helpful for a friend, please give them a link to it. It'll help them and it'll help me too. I'd also like to invite you to help me find out more about the challenges you're facing, your dreams, your goals, and how I can help you overcome what's holding you back. We both do better when we know better, and your success is my success. So please reach out and interact. You can visit our website, bestbusinesscoach.ca for Canada or California, where I'm from and where I'm living. You're welcome to also try out one of our paid programs. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and pretty much every other social media channel you can think of. You should also subscribe to the podcast, and if you're enjoying them, please leave us a nice review. It really helps. That's all for now. Once again, thank you. Take care of yourself, and remember, the world needs the best business you can build.